Vigil, Ante, and the Vigilante Antics by BelleAmant. Read by Oakshadow 5. Chapter 40. Internships start. Internships arrive sooner than Izuku expected. Soon enough, he's waiting at the train station to watch his peers depart, heading off to whatever agency they chose in the end. Hitoshi stands beside Izuku, half leaning on the shorter boy.
I still don't see why we had to come to the station,
Hitoshi mutters.
Aizawa said we're both heading to UA for the first day anyways.
Because Aizawa said he had to make sure everyone else gets on their trains, Izuku reminds his friend. And he probably just didn't want to suffer in public spaces alone. A snort escapes from Hitoshi, and then the valet head boy shifts, readjusting the bag on his back.
Right, I forgot that we're being housed by an introvert.
As if you need it as bad as him, Izuku chided teasingly, voice low in the crowded station. If we had the money, I bet you never would have left the house before we got taken in.
Most likely,
Hitoshi admits easily.
But you wouldn't have complained about doing the same.
The joys of being an ambivert, Izuku says, and as a half-hearted jab for his teasing tone. Their playful bantering is cut off when Aizawa calls for his class's attention, causing his students to gather around him.
You all have everything?
Aizawa asks, sounding as exhausted as always. A round of cheerful affirmations follow, and Izuku almost laughs at the man's sigh.
Good. Remember, you are not to wear your hero costumes unless you have permission to. Being in this course is a privilege, not a right, and you are to act maturely when you are out and about. Understood?
Yeah, Ashido cheers, earning an announced correction about politeness. Izuku doesn't pay attention to the comment, however, attention already drifting away to look at his peers. He pays closer attention to his friends, though. Well, admittedly, Izuku isn't certain that they're his friends, as he's never hung out with any of them out of school, and he only has the numbers due to Tenya's insistence that everyone have contact with one another. But he thinks that he can consider most of his classmates as friends. Like Ashido, who is stuck nearby since the second day of school. She has called him one of her favorite people, and Izuku supposes that has to count for something. There's also Kirishima, Kaminari, and Jiro, who popped up alongside Ashido and never really left after that. Yarozu has also been rather nice to him, although they don't talk as much. And Saro and Tokoyami, who have been talking to him more since the sports festival. Todoroki seems to be a bit closer too, now that they've bonded over their mutual hate of his father. Tsuyu and Uraka are both willing to talk to him, although lately Uraka has been a bit odd around him. And, of course, there's Tenya, who has been his friend for even longer than the school year alone. Most of his peers are people Izuku would consider friends, actually. It's a realization that shakes the boy ever so slightly, especially when he realizes that all but one of his peers actually seem to at least tolerate him. And then there's Bakugo. But not everything is about the explosive blonde, so Izuku can't fathom himself to mind. Izuku barely spares a glance to the volatile teen as his class disperses, heading in the direction of the trains they'll need to take. His eyes quickly catch onto one friend in particular, one who seems to be stiffer and more stoic than usual. Izuku doesn't realize that he's following after Tenya before he hears his own voice calling out, saying, "Hey, Ida-kun!" Tenya stops, the movement too forced, too sudden to seem right. There's no fluidity in the boy's motions when he turns to face them, where normally Tenya isn't quite so robotic. "Yes, Midoriya-kun?" Tenya asks, and Izuku speaks without thinking. "You know that you can text me anytime, right?" Izuku asks, and Tenya nods sharply. "Good, don't forget that." He doesn't mention Tensei, nor does he hint at the pro-hero's injuries, even though he knows that is what caused such a weight to be placed on Tenya's shoulders. He doesn't try to dissuade Tenya from doing anything foolish, because he believes in his friend to do the right thing. No, Izuku just offers a place to vent, an ear to listen, a shoulder to cry on. Tenya stiffens her shoulders, and the light turns his glasses so opaque that Izuku can't read the boy's eyes. The message is clear, however. "Thank you, Midoriya-kun. I'll remember that." Tenya lies, voice stilted, and Izuku knows. Tenya will not come to him. But Izuku cannot and will not control his friend, and so he puts on his best smile and pretends that he believes the boy. He hopes that Tenya will be okay, that Tenya will lose his pain when he sees how Tensei gets better in the coming weeks. And Izuku lets Tenya walk away. When Izuku walks back to Hitoshi's side, he doesn't say a word about the interaction. He doesn't need to, as Hitoshi simply takes the brunette by his hand and puts him over to Aizawa. The only three left, Aizawa leads the boys into a train, and they head to UA. The first day of training is intense, and yet the only thing Izuku can think of at the end of the day is whether or not his friend is okay. There are no new messages. When Shota offered an internship to Midoriya and Shinzo, he expected one of two outcomes. The first was that both boys would look past the offer, perhaps not even noticing it as they were overwhelmed by the literal thousands of offers from actual agencies. It was more likely that they'd overlook his name, too eager to see what else the world could offer them. After all, Shota is already one of their teachers. It would make sense for them to choose someone else. It was a logical choice. The second outcome that Shota had come up with was less likely, but also a logical one. In the second outcome, Midoriya and Shinzo would both decide to work with him. They both planned to be underground heroes, from what Shota's been told and overheard, so working with Shota would be a good way to learn the ins and outs of such a career choice. And Shota knows by now that the two look up to him. Perhaps not as a guardian, but definitely as a pro-hero. So he assumed that the show of idolism might have pushed them to choose him. He never expected them to separate, if only because he's never seen them choose not to be a team if they had the option to be one. It was like the two came in a package. If you found Vigil, Ante was never far behind. If you wanted Midoriya, you'd get Shinzo as well. Shota does not get Midoriya, but he does get Shinzo. Hisashi gets Midoriya, which is almost surprising. Almost, because Shota knows the boys who have been living in the slum for months. He doesn't know everything, of course, but one thing he does know is their enthusiasm for heroes. He also knows that, while he is Shinzo's favorite, a fact that had surprised Shota and later pleased him, Midoriya has a top 3, unable to pick just one hero to focus on. And while Shota may take one of those spots due to his quirkless fighting style, and Ome takes another due to his ability to calm crowds with a single smile, Hisashi takes the final place due to his ability to inspire Midoriya. So, really, Shota should have expected this third outcome. It's not a bad one, Shota decides. Working with Shinzo one-on-one is easy enough, the boy focusing more now that his friend isn't beside him. The first day, he'd worked alongside Hisashi to train the boys. They had taken over a training ground at UA and had coached the boys on different fighting techniques over the course of the day. By the time they went home, the sun was setting and the boys looked ready to collapse. On the second day, Hisashi had whisked Midoriya away before Shota even woke up, leaving him with Shinzo. If Shota remembered correctly, Hisashi had planned on taking Midoriya to his agency. Something about showing off everything from his radio station to their gear room, although Shota had a feeling that Hisashi is more excited about the former than the latter. When the more enthusiastic half of the household was out, the exhausted ones got to work. Shota taught Shinzo about stealth and more, working the boy to the bone. Shinzo did well, which wasn't surprising considering the boy's history. Still, Shota was, dare he say it, proud of the boy. Then comes Wednesday, and Shota decides to take the boy on a patrol. Normally, Shota is one for night patrols, but he's decided that Shinzo can deal with one of those later tonight, or early Thursday morning. Because even if Shinzo has experience running on rooftops at midnight, it's been a few months since he's been allowed to do so, and Shota does not want to see Shinzo tripping off of the roof. I just don't feel like catching him, Shota tells himself, but it feels like he's just making up excuses. Nevertheless, Shota tells Shinzo the plan, and 10 minutes later they're up on the rooftops, unnoticed by the people below. Shota has never considered himself to be the type of person who gives off a kind aura. He's not really the kind of guy who people look at and think, yeah, this is the guy that I'm going to spill my tragic backstory into, definitely. He's scruffy looking, and is what memory calls a resting bitch face, so he's never really surprised when people don't like opening up to him. And Shinzo has been rather tight-lipped since he arrived back in February. Both he and Midoriya have kept mum about most of the past, details never really coming out. All the boys have told him so far is that they like heroes. They trained a lot to become heroes, and they were vigilantes because they were too young to become heroes. It was all about heroes, to the point where Shota was almost convinced that the boys just didn't know how to enjoy themselves. Or maybe they did, but didn't want to tell Shota anything. But the point is, Shota isn't the best candidate for spilling one's life story to, and Shinzo has never made any attempts to seem like the kind of kid who liked to tell people about himself. That's why Shota is surprised when Shinzo starts talking, and instead of sarcastic comments coming out of his mouth, it's little recollections of his past. I remember the first time Izu and I went roof hopping, Shinzo says idly, completely out of the blue. Shota glances at the boy, and his eyes seem wistful as he uses his capture gear to swing himself onto the next building. We were pretty new to the whole Vigilante thing. Probably didn't even have 100 saves in our belts yet, but we needed to get higher ground. A chuckle slips from his throat, and it's one of the fondest noises Shota has heard from his ward. Turns out, the hardest part of rooftop parkour isn't getting up to the top. It's staying there while leaping over alleys. Shota can agree with that sentiment. He remembers the first time he took a patrolable rooftop. If it weren't for his capture weapon, he likely would have landed in a garbage bin or two. We got the hang of it pretty fast though. Shinzo continues, and Shota wonders if Shinzo is even aware that he's talking, or if the boy has picked up a muttering habit similar to Midoriya. The two tend to replicate one another, and Shota has seen the green-haired problem child adopting Shinzo's drier tone, so it wouldn't be surprising to see the reverse happen. Either way, it seems that the patrol has turned from a trip through the nearby cities into a trip down memory lane. Shota won't complain. It's nice to see one of his kids' wards being so open for once, and with him of all people. Shota won't admit it, but it makes him feel like less of a guardian and more of a father, and he likes the feeling. Izu has always been good at picking up new things, Shinzo says, voice filling with pride. He says that I do too, but Izu takes it to a whole new level. If he hadn't told me about the X-rays, I would have sworn that the boy has an intelligence quirk to match Nezu's. X-rays? I'm not the only one who's thought that Izu has a mental quirk, almost like me. Here, Shota pays attention as Shinzo's voice takes on a saddened tone, the boy keeping his eyes more focused on the directions that don't involve looking Shota's way. I've seen some of the reports on the sports festival. Because you and Yamada never specified that Izu is quirkless, most people have assumed that he has an intelligence-based quirk, or one related to his gadgets, something that helps him create things and overwhelm opponents with strategy alone. That's why he got so many offers. I hate that I know that. I hate that if you guys hadn't left things so vague, Izuku would have been lucky to get half of the offers he did, if any. I hate that Izu's hard work is being passed off as a quirk, and I hate that Izu knows that everyone views him this way. They stopped moving by now, and Shota really looks at Shinzo. He sees how the boy's shoulders shake, how his fists are clenching into his capture weapon, how his jaw is set. And when Shinzo finally looks at him, Shota can see how his eyes are tearing up. Sometimes, Shota forgets how young these boys are. But here, Shinzo looks like the 15-year-old he is, one who risks his life for 5 years to protect people he never knew and would likely never see again, one who was thrown into an orphanage because his parents didn't want him, one who has more problems than he will even say, one who is admitting one of his problems, or at least one of his closest friends' problems that involves him heavily, one who is looking up to him for some answer to a question he isn't asking out loud, but is screaming inside. Can Midoriya succeed without a quirk? Can my partner stay by my side even if the world finds out the truth? Shota isn't one to lie. He isn't one to say pretty words for the sake of appeasing kids with big dreams. Luckily, he has no reason to lie.
You'll make it far, kid,
Shota says.
The two of you will. Just keep your heads out of trouble, and you'll be able to do it. It doesn't matter if you have a good quirk, bad quirk, or no quirk at all. As long as you two keep trying, I have no doubts that you'll succeed.
Shota isn't one to sing the praises of his students, but he's glad that he said all of that, because it seems to be the right thing to have done. Shinzo smiles up at him, and it isn't the beaming grin that Midoriya tends to give, but it's genuine and open. It makes Shota feel the urge to smile back. So, of course, the hopeful, happy moment is thrown to shit when villains attack the city, including multiple Nomu. Fun! Izuku has enjoyed his internship so far. He's pretty sure that he would have been just as eager to learn no matter who he chose, but working with Yamada is nice. And it never hurts to be familiar with the person who's guiding you, so Izuku supposes that picking his teacher and guardian was a good decision. At the very least, he didn't have to risk being taught by someone whose personality would clash with his own. Somewhere in Japan, Bakugo sneezes as Janice forcefully fixes his hairdo for the 3rd time that day. Yamada is a good teacher. Izuku has known this for a while, especially once he joined 1A and, subsequently, Yamada's overly enthusiastic English classes. But the man stays in his element even when he switches from school teacher to pro hero and radio host. It's been fun. On Monday, Izuku and Hitoshi went to UA, where they trained together for the entire day. On Tuesday, Yamada took him to his agency, giving him a tour, and showing off his radio booth before sparring with him. That had been exhilarating, as Izuku had never really gotten the chance to fight Prismatic in the past, to focus on escaping the voice hero. Afterwards, Yamada showed off his gear, and let Izuku grill him for details on his quirk while jotting everything down in a small notebook that he had brought with him. They fought some more, and then they went back to the house. Now it's Wednesday, and Izuku is practically vibrating in place because Yamada had promised him that they'd be patrolling. Patrolling! Izuku hasn't gone on a patrol since February. He's eager to get back to the streets, without even getting in trouble for it. The morning flies by, Yamada running Izuku through some confidence exercises. They're valuable for hero arc, trust me, little listener. And then they're slipping into their hero gear and heading out. They walk through the streets side by side, keeping an eye out for anything suspicious. They don't find anything out of the ordinary, which Yamada seems to be thrilled by. Being a hero isn't all about fighting and rescuing, Yamada informs Izuku. Sometimes it's about letting people feel safe. By patrolling around, we deter villains and comfort everyone around us. Hearing the blonde's words, Izuku nods. You don't deter villains though, his man reminds him. You encourage them with every single weapon you provide them. He doesn't try to protest his own thoughts. He doesn't even get a chance to, because suddenly he's being knocked into by a small force, causing him to stumble back. Izuku looks down, bewildered by the sudden impact. Teary black eyes meet his own, and Izuku blinks at the small boy that stares up at him, and promptly starts to cry. Izuku reacts on instinct, on forgotten nights where he'd console Hitoshi, making him crouch down, gently pulling the boy into a hug. The boy stiffens, then clings to his jumpsuit, burying his face into the fabric. Izuku lets him, running a hand over the child's spiky black hair. It'll be alright, Izuku murmurs automatically. Everything will be fine. No, it won't, the boy sobs. They're gone! They're gone! They left me! The words are too close to what Hitoshi used to cry. Far too close for Izuku's liking. They left me! Hitoshi wailed, clinging to Izuku's chest. Izuku was too small to shield the boy from the world, but he did his best, wrapping his arms around his only friend's shoulders. They didn't deserve you, Izuku stated. They were stupid to give you up. It's because of my quirk, Hitoshi said, and Izuku hated that was the truth. They think I'm a villain. You aren't, Izuku promised, but that wasn't enough to bring back Hitoshi's parents, and it never would be. It would take quite a few years for Hitoshi to go from missing his parents to resenting them, and even longer for the boy to just forget them altogether. Perhaps that was why Hitoshi jumped onto the chance to gain a true mother so quickly. That was their mistake, Izuku says, back in the present, staring at a black-haired child and not his violet-haired friend. That wasn't your mistake, and you shouldn't feel the need to suffer for it. The boy only sobs harder, and Izuku rubs the boy's back, trying to comfort him. He glances up when he hears footsteps approaching. A lady with short brown hair frowns, eyes filled with sadness. Yamada just watches on, lips taken down as well. Izuku looks at the former, but she doesn't say anything, so Izuku returns his attention to the sobbing child that's practically on his lap. Izuku kneels on the ground, minimizing his chances of falling to the ground by letting the boy cry out all of his tears. If the kid is even remotely like Izuku, it can take a while to get everything out, and Izuku isn't going to rush the boy. It's clear that the child needs this. If Izuku were keeping track of the time, he'd figure that he spent the better part of half an hour just leaning on the sidewalk, hugging this random child to his chest and letting the kid sob all over him. But he's not watching the clock, so when the boy finally pulls back, he doesn't even bat an eye. Instead, he gives the boy one of his softest smiles, brushing away a stray tear with his gloved hand. Sorry, the boy grumbles, but Izuku shakes his head. It's fine, Izuku says easily. Everyone needs to cry sometimes. I just hope that it helped. The boy lowers his eyes, chin dipping as he looks to the ground. He doesn't respond, but that's alright. Instead, he wishes the boy farewell when the tiny kid starts to stomp away. The lady stays behind, looking at Izuku with kind eyes. Thank you, she says softly. He's just lost his parents, and he's been holding a lot in. Thank you for comforting him. He just lost his parents. Izuku smiles back, but his feels a lot faker than it did just a minute ago. He nods anyway, saying, "It's not a problem at all. I hope that he has the proper support to move on." He doesn't wish for the boy to feel better soon, because Izuku doubts that that wish can be fulfilled easily. But having someone there, even just one person, that can mean the world to someone who's young and hurting. And if Izuku is right, the boy looks to be 4 or 5 years old. He's around the same age Izuku was when he lost his own mother. At least I have the chance to bring her back, Izuku thinks guiltily. I'll be there for him, the lady promises, unaware of how close the situation is to Izuku's own, and then bows slightly. Thank you, again. And then she's gone, following the small boy who's just had his world turned upside down. Izuku watches them go, and feels like crying himself. Instead, Izuku turns to Yamada and asks, "Where to next?" Yamada looks at him with poorly masked concern, asking, "Are you sure you want to continue patrolling? You seem upset too, little listener." "Just some old memories," Izuku says, brushing off the concern. "It's nothing I'm not used to." His attempt to calm Yamada's worries seemed to only fuel them, Yamada's eyebrows pinching as he looks conflicted. "You know, you don't always have to be okay, Midori." A loud crashing noise cuts off the blonde, and they both look away to search for the source. In the distance, Izuku sees smoke rising from a building. Above the building, a horrific mutation of a monster flies in the sky. "Nomu," Izuku whispers. His feet start moving before he can even think, dragging the grenade further into Hosu. "Come on, Present Mike!" Izuku shouts when the man doesn't immediately follow, kicking the pro hero into gear. "Ready to see how a pro fights?" Yamada asks as he starts to run towards the fight, and Izuku snorts despite his rising adrenaline. "I've had pros fight me," Izuku retorts. Then a thought strikes him. He's in Hosu, and there's Nomu. Perhaps more, if the rising amount of screams are any indication. But he's not the only one in Hosu. Tenya. "Present Mike," Izuku shouts. "I need permission to fight, even if only in self-defense." "What?" Yamada yelps. "Listener, I think Shota will have my head if I send you out there." "And Nomu might have my head if I'm not allowed to defend myself," Izuku argues, and sees how Yamada winces in the corner of his eye. "Right, alright, but only in self-defense. Got it, analyst?" "Understood." "Good." Any further conversation is cut short when a second Nomu pops up, and Izuku leaves Yamada's side to help a nearby civilian, Yamada moving to attack the Nomu. As he helps the civilian to safety, however, he hears the one thing he was hoping not to. "Tenya! Tenya, where are you?" Pro Hero, when Izuku recognizes his manual, calls out, and Izuku feels his stomach drop as his worst fear is confirmed. Tenya is loose in Hosu, the same place that the hero killer attacks, and attacked Tenya's older brother. For some reason, Izuku has a feeling that the day won't end well. He's not wrong. Oh, we're in the internship arc and the Hosu fight. I'm so excited for the Stain fight. That's gonna be so cool. But anyways, guys, I hope you all enjoyed chapter 40 of Vigil, Ante and the Vigilante Antics, and I'll see you all next time. Bye!